Okay, everyone, we'll start our introductions as we begin the webinar today. My name is Michelle Biggert, and I'm the Director of Client Relations for Berner Law Group, a local trust and estates and elder law firm serving clients from Manhattan to the east end of Long Island. We are happy to say that we just recently opened up our East Hampton office and hope that you will join us at that office soon. So I am so thrilled today. I have my coworker on with us. Her name is Tara Drewer, and she handles the community Medicaid home care services in our office. Herself and our speaker today will be monitoring our Q&A section. So just some quick housekeeping. If you do have a question throughout the seminar, please feel free to use the Q&A section on the webinar to put your question in, and we will do our best to answer all questions at the end of the seminar. So I am thrilled today to talk about this wonderful topic, and we have Jennifer Benjamin, who is a geriatric care manager and the owner of Family First Companions. Family First Home Companions is a professional caregiving service that she founded with her mom, Alice, in 2005. Family First helps older adults to live independently at home by providing professional caregivers with assistance uh, with different activities of daily living, including meal preparation, light housekeeping, transportation, and companionship. Jennifer has been a speaker at local and regional conferences and provides continuing education programs to nurses and social workers in the Northwell healthcare system, as well as Catholic Health Services. She often speaks about topics including aging in place, family caregiving, geriatric depression, dementia care, and much more. For more information, you'll be able to visit Jennifer on her website at familyfirsthomecompanions.com, and her telephone number is 631-319-3961. You'll have all this information on the email that you will get after the webinar, which will also include the recording in case you are unable to stay on for the full amount today. So Jennifer, with that, I'm happy to have you and happy to have you get started on how you can empower the family caregiver.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and thank you again to Berner Law Group for inviting me back to talk about this topic. This is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart because I've been a family caregiver myself, and I work with family caregivers every day in my business. I also have been running a support group for family caregivers for the last 6 or 7 years for those that care for someone with dementia. So working with family caregivers, it just comes naturally for me these days. And I'm very happy to share these tools and tips that we're going to talk about in the program. So just really quick, I am a geriatric care manager. I started my company with my mom, as Michelle mentioned, back in 2005. And we do service all of Long Island with in-home caregiving services. We start out by creating a care plan for our client. We introduce a caregiver who we feel would be a good match from our team. And then they experience well-being because our caregiver is there to support them and to help them stay independent in their own home. We offer hourly visits, overnight visits, 24/7 live-in care, and we do service all of Long Island. So I want to start today's program with this video from ARP. So if you are tuning in through Zoom for this, please do turn up your volume. And sometimes it may help if you close out everything else on your computer so that you can get better quality with the video. But this is a really nice video that ARP put together a few years ago to give us a little glimpse into the day in the life of a caregiver, just like yourselves that are on this call right now. So I'm going to start with this.
Hello, rise and shine. Okay.
He said,
No, again.
she said,
Holy moly.
yeah, you can come back, put a little.
Okay. Better than mine.
Keep your hands up. Yeah, I think it has.
Okay, flip. There you go.
Okay, so I just love that video. No matter how many times I see it, it always gets me a little choked up because it's just such a nice compilation of what these caregivers do, and also it really shows us how dependent those family members are on their caregiver. And from the beginning of the day to the end of the day, those caregivers are so heavily involved in all the different things their family member is doing to help them get through that day. So, so to go over the goals of what my program is for today is to understand the signs of caregiver burnout and the needs for self-care, to provide tools and tips to manage the expected and unexpected challenges of caregiving, to understand your options and resources in order to make informed decisions about your loved one's care, and how to advocate on your loved one's behalf. Advocating is something that not everyone is really prepared for, and can be very challenging in certain circumstances. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So family caregiving defined is any relative, partner, friend, or neighbor who has a significant personal relationship with and provides a range of assistance for an older person or an adult with a chronic or disabling condition. About 65 million family members and friends provide care to loved ones in the United States, representing a critical element of the long-term care system. So just some quick facts about caregiving. 1 in 5 adults are caregivers. Caregiving can be lengthy. Half have provided care for at least 2 years. And it can also be intense. 30% have provided care for at least 20 hours per week. I used to call it kind of like a secret second career for many people because they still work their day job full time, and then they have their caregiving job. How do caregivers help? 4 in 5 manage household tasks, and over half assist with personal care. And who are the caregivers? Well, 58% are women, 20% are 65 years or older, 37% are caring for a parent or a parent in-law, and nearly 10% are providing care to someone with dementia. And related to future caregiving, we know that 1 in 6 non-caregivers expect to become caregivers within 2 years. So that number, that 65 million in the United States that are caregivers, is just going to continue to grow. So characteristics of caregivers and the caregiving situation. So this diagram shows us what percentage of the population in each state are reported caregivers. And between 2015 and 2017 in New York State, it's very small here, but that number shows 23.5% of New Yorkers report being a caregiver. And that's anyone age 45 years or older. Who take care of a friend or a family member. And as you can see in the dark blue states like Oklahoma, Arkansas, those numbers go up higher, somewhere between 24 and 30% of the population being caregivers. So family caregivers play a vital role in healthcare. Not only are they vital to their family members that depend on them for help, but our healthcare system also greatly depends on them. They're doing more and more, and they're getting more involved in complex care. In fact, an in-depth 2019 study from ARP revealed that millions of caregivers today provide care that would be considered medical and complex, like wound care, administering injections, using meters and monitors, and other tasks that were once relegated to nurses. And maybe some of you on this call today can relate to that. And a majority of these caregivers say they feel woefully unprepared for the task. They don't feel well trained in handling a lot of this medical care, and they fear making a mistake. And caregivers save our health system a lot of money. Their free labor, so to speak, by providing the caregiving is upwards of $500 billion if it was provided by professional caregivers. And in this diagram, I'm showing you that there's approximately 65 million family caregivers in the top line in the United States, and we have versus 6 million nurses, LPNs, and CNAs. So without those 65 million caregivers, I don't know where where those adults that depend on other people would be, because clearly we need them. So caregivers' sense of obligation. This is something that comes on a very personal level for a caregiver. They feel this strong sense of obligation and responsibility to take care of that person. But we also know that based on reports, 57% of caregivers report that they don't have a choice about performing these medical clinical tasks, and that this lack of choice is self-imposed. They feel that they have to do this. 43% feel that these tasks are their personal responsibility because no one else can do it, or because insurance will not pay for a professional caregiver. 12% report that they are pressured to perform these tasks by the care receiver, and 8% report that they are actually pressured by other family members to do these particular caregiving tasks that are more medically related. While most unpaid family caregivers report feeling a level of satisfaction in their duties, and it's actually upwards of 88% that report feeling that it's very rewarding to take care of their loved one, many unpaid family caregivers sacrifice their own well-being in order to support their loved one. They can feel the impact on a financial level, an emotional level, and just a physically exhausting level. So we know family caregivers are very vital, and they're also vulnerable. About 1 in 10 caregivers report that caregiving has caused their physical health to get worse. Caregivers have lower levels of subjective well-being and physical health than non-caregivers. They also report more chronic conditions like heart disease, cancer, diabetes at nearly twice the rate of non-caregivers. And studies demonstrate that caregivers have a diminished immune response, which leads to frequent infection and increased risk of cancers. And the physical stress of caregiving can affect the physical health of the caregiver, especially if they're doing tasks like transferring someone out of a bed to a wheelchair, helping that person to walk or bathe. A lot of that physical lifting, and it takes a real toll on that person over time. So these types of things make those family caregivers very vulnerable. So there are 9 signs of caregiver burnout, and they include these: having a mix of different emotions from one minute to the next, getting sick often, snapping at everyone, irritability, withdrawal from friends, family, and other loved ones, loss of interest in activities previously enjoyed, feelings of wanting to hurt oneself or the person for whom he or she is caring, changes in weight and or appetite, changes in sleep patterns, and emotional and physical exhaustion. I want to share a story about caregiver burnout. I've seen a lot of family caregivers that are experiencing burnout, and everyone kind of tends to have different degrees of it. And I will never forget one particular situation. A few years ago, I had a husband and wife that called our company for services. The wife had Lewy body dementia. And Lewy body tends to affect the person's behaviors and personality. They can have real drastic changes in their personality, their moods, and certainly they display a lot of behavioral symptoms. So when I started out, I met with a husband and wife, and the husband was very happy, very cheerful, optimistic about the future. His wife had been diagnosed for a few years at that point, but she was still fairly independent. They were on the younger side. For us, we help people in their 80s and 90s. They were actually in their early 70s. So she was afflicted with this disease at a younger age. And we started out with just a few days. He really just needed some light assistance, a caregiver to come in to spend time with her, take her out shopping, out to lunch while he went to work. Pretty rapidly, within a few months, those few days turned into every day. She was becoming more and more anxious, agitated, and she really couldn't be left alone. Then fast forward another maybe 6 to 8 months, he now needed live-in care. So all within a year, her situation rapidly changed and got worse, unfortunately, which we do sometimes see with this particular type of dementia. So I went back, once we started live-in services, I was doing one of my follow-up visits to meet with him, but particularly to talk with him about some recommendations that I had. And when I walked in, he looked so different and so changed to me. This was someone who, when I first met him almost a year prior, he was happy and very friendly. They were very religious, so they were they had a lot of faith in the path that they were going to be on, that they were going to get through it together. And now there was no sense of joy or anything. He was very depressed, very sad. He looked very pale, and he actually had developed his own health issues at that point. But I'll never forget how so drastically physically changed he was. And it really took me back. And when I talk about caregiver burnout, his is sort of an extreme example, but the amount of stress he was under really led to a lot of those physical changes that he was going through. So, so caregiver burnout is very, very real, and everyone experiences it in a different way, but it certainly leads to a lot of issues down the line for the person. So my next section talks about tools and tips. So I'm going to start this section with a video. This is by Amy Goyer, who is a caregiving expert from ARP, and she's going to talk about how to create a caregiving plan.
Hi, I'm Amy Goyer, AARP's caregiving expert. Whether you are caring for a family member or friend after a hospitalization or health crisis, or you're gradually increasing support over time, you'll have less stress and more success if you create a caregiving plan for yourself. A simple plan gives you practical information, a framework, and perspective, which raises your comfort and confidence as a caregiver. These are some key components to include in your plan. Number 1, this is your plan. So first, assess your situation, including your personal, family, work, and financial needs, as well as your strengths, capabilities, and limitations when it comes to caregiving. Number 2, evaluate your loved one's overall picture. Assess their health, social, financial, housing, transportation, and other needs, abilities, and goals, such as maintaining or improving health, being able to walk, cook, or bathe, or remaining independent in their homes. Get help from a local area agency on aging, which you can find at eldercare.gov, or if your loved one has been in the hospital, a discharge planner can help. They may need help with personal care or perhaps with managing finances or socializing with others. Number 3, next, make a list of the existing resources available to help meet their needs, including people who can help them, financial resources, housing, and services they receive. When you compare the list of unmet needs with the list of resources, you'll have an idea of where the gaps are and what changes are needed for your loved ones to remain safe and achieve their goals. Do you need different types of services and support? Does their living situation need to change? Number 4, now list the things you can realistically do to help fill the gaps. Can you offer ongoing or periodic hands-on care, or do you need to help from a distance? Are you able to address all of their unmet needs? Probably not. You may need support for your personal and work life to free you up for increased caregiving. And you probably need to build your caregiving team. Make a list of roles and tasks your loved ones need that you can't provide. Enlist family, friends, and community volunteers and paid services to take those on. Check out my Taking Care video, Building Your Caregiving Team, for more in-depth tips on this step. Number 5, you'll need to create a budget that includes income and expenses associated with your loved one's care. If there is not enough to go around, consider public benefits and find out if your loved ones have long-term care insurance. Perhaps family members can contribute. I recommend that you view the caregiving plan as a starting point. I've learned from experience it will inevitably change over time. That's just the reality of caring for others. Needs, goals, and resources will change. Accepting that from the start will lower your stress. You haven't failed if you need to adapt your plan. Your goal is not to prevent change. Your goal as a caregiver is actually to be adaptable. With a basic plan in place, you'll be more prepared to ride the waves of change. I'd like to hear about your caregiving plans. Find me on Twitter at Amy Goyer, and for my blog and more great videos.
Okay, so that was again Amy Goyer from ARP talking about creating a caregiving plan, and I think it's just she has some really nice tips in there, 5 simple tips. But I can tell you when I speak to families and they call regarding our home care services, oftentimes they've assessed the situation, they see where the gaps are, they know what they're already doing for their loved one and where they need the assistance from a home care company. But many times the existing resources, where to find existing resources here in Long Island is the biggest challenge. And I do hear this a lot, even in my support group, that just knowing what's out there, what's available, what's going to meet a certain need is very hard to find. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a moment, some of the local resources that are available. But first, I talk about prognosis and what's ahead. So when you are caring for a loved one that has a medical condition, a chronic illness, or maybe multiple chronic illnesses, just knowing what the situation is with their medical situation is half the battle. So what symptoms should I expect now and in the future? These would be questions for the doctor. What are some ways that we need to adapt to the medical condition? What are the main safety concerns for someone with this condition? Which symptoms should I be concerned about and call a doctor for? Because there may be symptoms that you really know that are always going to be there, and they just come with the territory. You don't necessarily have to be overly concerned about them. What pharmacological and non-pharmacological interventions are available? This is really important because there are a lot of non-pharmacological ways to manage someone's symptoms. I actually do a program on alternative treatments for dementia, and some of the methods I include in there are things like doll therapy, which uses dolls to help soothe or console a person who's very anxious, to even things like aromatherapy that could help with certain symptoms that someone experiences with a medical condition. What supportive services should we consider? At what point do families make the decision to place a loved one into a care facility? That's a big question that often comes up in the support group that I run, because that decision obviously is not made lightly, and many families are often on the fence. Can I continue to manage this at home? Um, does the family member that's providing the care have the capacity to take on that level of care if someone is now become physically incapacitated or bedridden? So a lot of things go into making that decision, but certainly talking to the doctor at what point, and many times doctors can give some insight into that. When do families tend to place a loved one into a facility? And what financial options are available? There are things that are covered by insurance, as I'm sure many of you know, and many things that aren't covered by insurance. So to just give you a sense of what you need to know what's going to work for you within your budget and what options are out there. So one of my first tips here is to keep a care binder. A care binder is one central place that keeps all of the most important things for your loved one, including documents such as do not resuscitate order, to the medication list, to just their daily routine, maybe even a log that shows all day by the hour of the day what your loved one needs and what you do for your loved one, because it's an easy grab and go. It does help you stay organized, and it will allow you to pass the baton to someone in the event that you couldn't be there for your loved one. So it includes all these different things, even doctor information, emergency contacts, anything that's important to helping your loved one with their daily routine or their medical care would go into this binder. And I do have a free care binder template that I'm happy to give to anyone on this call. You can just email me and I will send you the template for that. And that will just be basically just filling in the blanks to get started with creating your care binder. So that's my first tip. And then lining up backup. I often see this where the family member that either calls my office to inquire about home care or in my support group, they are the only ones oftentimes shouldering the responsibilities of the caregiving. And I always recommend having a backup plan. So even if it's just something as simple as having a neighbor who you could call in the event of an emergency and you couldn't be there, to lining up relatives and getting people involved. Sometimes in my support group, I hear that the family members are not interested in helping. And they've tried to include them and tried to get them involved, but for whatever the reason, that those family members are not willing to help. But I always say there's always some way that they can help, even if it's something really small. There's always something they can do. I have calls sometimes from long distance family members that are doing the research. They're just looking up home care companies, and they explain that to me on the phone. My sister, my brother, he's really the one that's doing all the care, but I'm just doing the research for him. So there's always some aspect of a person's care that I say can be done by other people. It doesn't only have to fall on one person. And even lining up professional services, home care services as your backup, so that you have someone else that you can call upon if ever you were not able to be there yourself. Support groups. A lot of people don't want to get involved in a support group for many different reasons. Some people aren't really that type of personality to join in a group and share personal experience, or maybe they look at it as something that's more for emotional support, and that's not really something they need per se. But I can tell you that support groups give you way more than that. They give you the insider knowledge. Many times in my support group, we are sharing just little tips. One example is we were talking about how someone's loved one kept having urinary tract infections, and it was a chronic problem going on and on. And the daughter was saying, and every time it happens, I have to get mom up, dressed, out of the house, which is so hard to do because she doesn't walk very well, get her to the doctor, have the urine tested, and so forth. And we shared in the group that there's actually over-the-counter UTI test strips that you could pick up at any pharmacy, CVS, Walgreens, and you don't have to go out to get over to a doctor or a lab if you want to first test at home to see if there's an infection. So something as small as that made such a difference for that daughter, where she said that, wow, that's like a life altering tip, because the amount of effort it takes to get mom out the door is enormous. And then recommendations for providers, just getting to know what are some companies or doctors that other members have used that they've had good experience with, that they would recommend. Insight to avoid mistakes. Many times in our group, there are people that have gone through this course with caregiving for many years and have gone through different stages of dementia with their loved one, and they share what worked for them and what didn't. And it helps those that are newer to this to understand maybe there's certain things that they can try to avoid. It is an opportunity to vent. There are a lot of mixed emotions that you go through as a caregiver, and it's really a roller coaster sometimes. And there isn't, I think, a better place to talk about what you're going through than to a group that completely knows what you're going through and that fully understands those same emotions, that because they're experiencing them themselves. And then the reminder that you're not alone. A support group, really lets you know that, okay, it's not just me. I'm not just the only one feeling this particular way, or that, I have family and friends that, don't have the same situation. So it's nice to know that someone else does have the same situation. So I definitely recommend support groups. And they can be available both online as well as in person. I think now we're starting to see more groups go in person. My group is still online, but we're talking about going back to in person in the next couple of months. So resources and tools. So I'm going to talk now about local community resources, local businesses with products and services that help, benefits and entitlements information. Oh, I'm sorry, not the benefits and entitlements as much. We'll touch on that a little bit, but I'm also going to be talking about online tools. So local community resources for caregiving. There are organizations such as Family Service League that offer caregiver counseling, support groups, and training, and their phone number is listed here. There's the Suffolk County Office for Aging and the Nassau County Office for Aging that has a free information and referral line. So if you call and ask for information and referrals, they will send you to someone who does know the local community resources in your area that you can tap into. And then support groups that are listed through the Alzheimer's Association, the Alzheimer's Disease Resource Center, Long Island Alzheimer's and Dementia Center, and then there's even American Parkinson's Association and other disease-related groups, which can also be found through some of the bigger health systems like Northwell and Catholic Health. And I have those websites listed here. So there are these local resources that are just focused on caregivers that you can tap into. And then there are local businesses that really provide support for both the family caregiver and for someone for your family member that needs the help. And what I did was, instead of listing all the different local businesses that are here in Long Island, because that list would go on for pages and pages, I want to direct you to my website, familyfirsthomecompanions.com, where I have a resource list with local Long Island companies on there. And then this list is all the different categories of local services and products that can help. So from home modifications, in-home care services, visiting doctors, home medical equipment, senior move managers, daily money managers, which is almost like your own personal bookkeeper. That's someone that would come into the home to help with paying bills, go through finances to see if anything is getting missed. They can really help, get all of those finances kind of sorted out and organized. Geriatric care managers, they are professionals that will come to the home and they will put together a full care plan. They'll coordinate home care services, physical therapy. They will make sure your loved one is getting to the doctor, that they have their medications. They really come in and they're one person that kind of does it all and coordinates all of these different services for the person. Visiting social workers, visiting lab test services, transportation services. There are private transportation companies that specifically focus on seniors or disabled adults. Home fusion therapy. Those are companies that will come in to provide in-home fusion of medications or antibiotics. There's the Alzheimer's store, which this is a specific company. This is the name of the company is the Alzheimer's store. And it is a website. You can actually Google Alzheimer's store and it will come up, but it is actually a local Long Island company. And they sell products that specifically support people with Alzheimer's at home. And it's everything from safety products, such as a gauge that goes onto a faucet to make sure the water doesn't get too hot and make sure the person doesn't burn themselves, to an automatic stove shut off, to even therapeutic dolls that, like I mentioned earlier, that can help kind of soothe the person if they get anxious. So the Alzheimer's store, another great local business. There's home security and cameras companies that can give you that ability to remotely monitor your loved one. Personal emergency response systems, meal delivery, adult daycare programs, prescription delivery and pill packets, assisted living facilities, adult homes, and skilled nursing facilities. So I really just put together this list of all the different types of products and services that are out there so that you have an understanding of just, what is available. And then to specifically look for companies, you can either visit, again, my website, familyfirsthomecompanions.com, and go to our resource section, or simply Google some of these types of businesses then to research those that are located in Long Island. Okay, and then there are online tools. So some of the online tools that are really helpful for family caregivers are ARP.org, like the video I showed you before with Amy Goyer. She's from ARP.org. They have a huge family caregiving website that has all kinds of educational articles and tools. There is Caring Bridge, which is a free online tool for sharing health updates. So it's an easy way to communicate health news to your family and friends, especially if you have a lot of family that are out of state and they call to ask, how is mom doing? What's going on? What's the diagnosis? Things like that. This is a way to share information in a secure way. You would start by registering your email address, personalizing your site. You would choose your privacy settings, and then start posting your updates. So that's caringbridge.org. And then there's caringvillage.com, which from storing documents and prescription information to sharing calendars, this is an app that helps caregivers communicate, coordinate, and put all of their care tasks into one place. So your personalized village becomes the command center for all of your caregiving activities. And then there's CareZone, which is another app that you can use to keep all of your loved ones' pertinent information and invite family and friends to view and participate in the person's care. It has a place for notes, for and observations, a task list, medication logging. You could even upload photos to it. So it's just another way to, keep everything in one place, and that's CareZone. And then there's ecare21.com. This provides round-the-clock patient monitoring through wireless and wearable devices such as a smartwatch or Fitbit. You can track the wearer's glucose, heart rate, activity, medication, weight, calorie intake, and sleep. And you, your loved one, and other family members, and even doctors can access this useful information no matter where they live or work. And then the last one here is medisafe.com, which helps you to manage the medications. So it helps with reminders for medication. It gives you education about the medicine, what the side effects could be. It tracks progress, and it even they even offer coupons for medications. So that's MediSafe. So if you're a little more technologically inclined and you would be, interested in using like an online tool to help you with your caregiving, these are just a list of a few of those types of tools. And the list actually goes on and on. There are a lot of different websites now that help you to manage the care and keep everything in one place. So how to be an effective advocate for your loved one. So what does advocacy mean when it comes to family caregiving? Well, first and foremost, it's upholding and respecting your loved one's wishes, whether those wishes have to do with end of life, something like a do not resuscitate order, or if it's just the fact that they want to stay in their home for as long as they are able, and you're doing everything you can to make sure that happens. Managing and overseeing financial and legal matters, advocating oftentimes means getting on the phone with insurance companies, not one of the most enjoyable tasks that come along with caregiving, but it does sometimes become an enormous task that has to just get done. But it is overseeing financial and legal matters. Sometimes I talk to families that have a loved one that was just diagnosed with dementia, and now they are going through all the finances to see, what has been paid, what has not gotten paid, figuring out, how to get everything back and organized. So that's a big part of advocating. Quality assurance, that has to do with making sure that whatever services, whether it's a doctor, a home care provider, that your loved one is receiving, that they are getting those services with quality, and they're getting their needs met. And then being the voice for your loved one, voicing their concerns. That's another big part of advocating, because we see it a lot in our work where the person that's receiving care can't articulate their needs anymore, whether it's due to dementia or having a stroke, another medical condition. They cannot really advocate for themselves anymore. So advocating comes with observation and being, the eyes and ears for your loved one. So keeping notes. Caregivers are often too busy or even just exhausted to notice small changes, but the slightest shift in our loved one's abilities, in their health, moods, safety, this could all indicate bigger problems. So keeping notes on any kind of a change, and nothing is too small to keep a note about. And catching these changes early can make all the difference in alleviating the problem. Using technology, as we just mentioned, some of these online tools, but even just, not only just phone calls, even using video calls like Zoom, Skype, or FaceTime can tell you more about subtle changes in a loved one's physical appearance. Or, as I mentioned earlier, a remote monitoring system with cameras or sensors to keep track of their movements, or to see what happened maybe in the past. Did your loved one fall last night, and want to see what happened, what caused the fall? I have a family recently that started overnight services with us. We've been helping them during the daytime with caregivers just during the day, but they noticed on the cameras that the mom had fallen a few times at night. So now they are starting to have overnight services. and they really would not have known what was happening at night unless they had those cameras, because she does have dementia and really couldn't tell them what was going on with her having falls. So, so definitely using technology is going to help you with advocating for your loved one. And then documenting your loved one's baseline so that you know, and any other providers that are involved in your loved one's care know what the baseline is for his or her health status. So maybe it's normal for your loved one to have dizziness because they take a blood pressure medication that causes that. But if your loved one has started to experience falls, or maybe they become nauseous from the dizziness, well, now we know that that's no longer part of the baseline. We have to start looking into what's going on, what's causing more of those other symptoms. So advocating also requires communication skills. And this becomes particularly challenging when you're put into a position where it could become confrontational. We see this sometimes in hospital settings or in nursing homes where the family member believes that their loved one is not being treated the best way or is not getting enough attention. And that can be very difficult where the family member, we know that we're dependent on the staff in those facilities to do the right thing and take care of the loved one. But we also know that maybe there's certain things they're missing, and those things are important and we can't ignore them. So in any situation like that, it's very hard, but try to put emotions aside and try to still speak in a respectful manner. There is always that old saying, you get, more bees with honey than vinegar. And it's still true in these situations. While it's upsetting to see signs that your loved one is not being attended to the right way, still try to stay focused on what needs to get addressed and keep those emotions to the side. Be clear, concise, and get to the point. We don't want to go into a whole long diatribe on, what's going on and what things you're already starting to conclude or accuse the staff about. We want to first, just get to the point of what your concern is so that they can understand it and they can get to addressing it. Get to know the professionals and the businesses that you're working with, whether it's a nursing home, an assisted living, even a home care company. Get to know them in the office so that you can keep an open line of communication. Find out how is the best way to communicate with those individuals. If it's a business office in a nursing facility, what's the best time to call so that you can ask certain billing questions. If it's a social worker in the hospital, just get to know them a little, what their schedule is so that you can reach them at certain times. I had a family member in a hospital for quite a while, and I got to know some of the nurses there. This was this past winter while she was there, and I got to know when is the best time to call, because I don't want to be overly annoying to them by calling all the time at the wrong times. So they shared with me, well, we have shift changes at 3 o'clock. So the best time would be to call after 4 or before 3. I got to know who is the head nurse, who is the nurse involved in, this specific type of thing, whether it's a certain medication or whatever the case may be. I just got to know who does what, when is the best time to reach them so that I can ask my questions and get the feedback without bothering them too much and still allowing them to do their job. When you have a burning concern, use I and ask the question. So as an example, I am really concerned about my mom's cough today. Or I noticed that Dad has been losing weight and I'm worried that he's not getting enough attention during meal times. Rather than, my dad lost weight and he's not getting enough attention during meal times. So rather than going right into something that sounds accusatory, turn it more towards I'm concerned, I noticed this. And then ask the question, what is the role of the dietary aid? Are they there to sit and watch and make sure my dad eats his food? Do they only specifically feed people that can't feed themselves? So that you are getting that clarity. I noticed that my husband's nails are getting too long. Is there someone that monitors the personal care of the patients? This comes up sometimes in my support group. They notice things, little symptoms, little things that are popping up that, are making them concerned. And, just it's all about voicing that concern and then asking, getting the clarity. And hopefully the staff do respond to what you're saying. There's always, higher levels in the facilities that you're working with, whether it's the executive director, the administrator. Sometimes there's even ombudsman. I've had people in my support group that have reached out to the ombudsman to get help with advocating for their loved one. So there are, many ways that you can get your concerns heard and addressed. So I'm going to end the program with this final section on taking care of you, which is so important as a caregiver, that you yourself are healthy, that you're able to continue in this capacity, in this role that you're in, with the responsibilities that you have, without your own health and well-being suffering. So self-care for family caregivers is truly the most important, because how can you provide the care if you yourself aren't well and strong? So identify your personal boundaries. We all have boundaries. We all have things that we're willing to do and not willing to do. And that's completely fine. It doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just an understanding of what you are able to do. Sometimes I speak to a spouse who is in her 80s, and she says, I cannot physically lift my husband. I don't have the physical strength. I'm 85 and I can't do that. So that's her boundary. She can do the cooking, she can do the medication management, everything else. She can't get involved in the physical care. So identify those boundaries for yourself. Maybe you've been doing a particular task that you really can't continue to do, and that's okay too. We all have different levels of capacity in different ways. So that's number one. Ask for and accept help. This is so important. Be prepared with a list of ways that people can help. I think sometimes it's easy to think that people are not willing to help, but many people are. And sure, there are definitely people that may not be willing to help, but be ready when someone does ask, because there are ways that they can, even if it's a small way, that they can just pick up some slack. Maybe it's just picking up groceries. I know some caregivers in my group that if someone offered to pick up the groceries one day, they would be so happy. So think about those ways that people can help you. Set goals for yourself, whether it's taking a break, that could be a goal, to getting help with caregiving tasks, engaging in activities that will make you feel healthy. Goals, can be really small, just for yourself, just to get an hour a week. Maybe that's all it is right now, or maybe it's going to be an hour a day for you to be able to get some time for yourself. Make stress reduction a priority. Recognize the warning signs when you're experiencing too much stress, and listen and address them. Don't let it spill over. Carve out me time. Again, this goes back to, just even setting goals, but carve out me time. I had a caregiver in my group that said, just 5 minutes a day. She goes into the bathroom to splash her face, to refresh herself, so that she can just get a moment away from her mom to just get a breather. 5 minutes, and that was it. And that for her was essential for her to get through her day. And then self-compassion. I often hear caregivers say that they feel very guilty. They lose their temper, they lose their patience. They get to a point where they're totally just disenfranchised. They experience a lot of this beating themselves up. Remember to be compassionate toward yourself. Remember that this is a role that is not easy, and it truly takes a village to take care of an adult who's completely dependent on others, and that it's completely natural to experience these emotions and to not always have all the patience in the world, or to not always have all the all the time in the world for your loved one, but you're only human. So remember this, to have self-compassion. So I'm going to end with a video on this gentleman who talks about how it's essential to be selfish in order to survive as a caregiver.
Almost everybody out there who can hear my voice is eventually going to care for a parent, a grandparent, or a loved one. Or maybe you're that one that's going to eventually need care. The National Association of Family Caregivers says that 1/3 of the population of the U.S. are already caregivers. Wow. Of those, roughly half of them are feeling down, depressed, and hopeless on a regular basis. That's according to AARP. Many of them will become sicker than the ones they care for, eventually needing a caregiver of their own. Now, the worst part is 30% of these caregivers will actually die before their loved ones do. So says agingcare.com. If you're not a caregiver, just wait. You'll either become one or you'll need one. That's why now is the time to prepare and learn how to become a caregiver, not after tragedy strikes. You see, caregivers need to learn how to become selfish if they want to survive. I know this firsthand. Let me tell you why. My wife Charlene and I had a fairy tale, storybook, romance, courtship, and marriage for the first 21 years of our lives together. We were in love with each other so much, I just knew I had to marry this girl before she got away. We raised our 3 daughters. We got them all out of the house. We even got them married off. All 3 of them twice. I think you're only supposed to pay for the first marriage. We now have 7 grandchildren. And right about the time that my wife and I were supposed to be entering into the empty nest phase of life, where we go wherever we want, whenever we want, don't have to worry about leaving the kids in the house to wreck the place, and we have the freedom and the independence and the finances. One day, my wife complains to me about this bad headache that she had for 3 days. She called it the headache of her life that just wouldn't go away. One day, I realized that actually it was the 4th day. On that 4th day, that headache ceased being only a headache. By the time the ambulance arrived, my wife had suffered a massive stroke, and it left her severely speech impaired and paralyzed on the right side. And in that moment, I was no longer just her husband. I was now her husband and her caregiver. The next 2 years was like a living hell for both of us. I had no idea what I was doing. I I made every mistake in the book, every mistake a caregiver could possibly make. It wasn't on my resume. I didn't even know what a caregiver was. However, I quickly learned that if I didn't become selfish, there was no way I was going to make this thing. I could have ruined my health. I might have even died before my wife would have. I quickly started realizing that I was experiencing the same problems that other caregivers experience. The first one is the guilt. I started feeling guilty all the time, but I quickly realized just because I was feeling guilt didn't mean that I necessarily deserved it. The next big problem that was plaguing me was this feeling that I was always never getting any help. But worse than that, it was because I couldn't even ask for help. I just had it in my mind. If I couldn't do this all by myself, I was a failure as a caregiver. That doesn't look good on a resume. It wasn't long before I started feeling these isolation feelings, like I was all alone in the world. My friends stopped calling, stopped coming by. I don't blame them because I was always negative and complaining when they did. Who wants to be around that? It wasn't long before I just started feeling hopeless and helpless. I remember screaming out, I don't even know who heard me, I can't take this anymore. I guess I was talking to God. I just went on in my pain because I didn't know what to do. But thank God that somebody invited me to a caregiver support group. I didn't know what that was, but I was desperate, so I went. And everything changed for me. I found people who were just like me, burned out caregivers. I found hope again. I remembered that the airlines tell us in the event of an emergency, put your mask on first before you help your loved one. What an amazing metaphor for all of life. I had to learn that if I didn't become selfish, there was no way I was going to survive this. And if I didn't survive, who was going to take care of Charlene? Let me talk about depression. With all the recent suicides in the news lately, we have to ask this question. If there is depression, is suicide far behind? Anthony Bourdain, Kate Spade, Robin Williams. These celebrities are no longer with us because they succumbed to that suicidal depression that affects caregivers as well. Yet we don't hear about how many caregivers died in the news, just the celebrities. Another important reminder why caregivers need to learn to become selfish in order to survive this thing, so that their loved ones can continue to receive their care. Everybody asks me, so how's your wife doing? And I proudly say, well, because I've learned how to become selfish and put my needs first, she's doing great. She's advanced through the grief process, and she has embraced the new normal and reinvented herself and figured out that if she's still alive, God must still have a purpose for her here on this earth. Now, she still can't talk, but she can communicate non-verbally through Pictionary, charades, two games I hate, by the way, but I'm learning to love. She still can't walk, but we bought her a power chair, and she loves it. She gets to go wherever she wants now. That chair has been all over the world with me, and I have trouble keeping up with it. And anyone who meets her for the first time is thoroughly amazed at how she has a smile on her face all the time and joy in her heart. She's my hero. I am so proud of her. She's like a one-armed wallpaper hanger. And I just don't know how she does it. But because of Charlene, I can now help other caregivers stay alive and stay healthy.
Well, I'm going to pause the video there because I don't want to make us too late. I see we're already a little behind the schedule, but I hope you appreciate the message from that video that related to self-care. It's important to take care of yourself and put yourself first so that you're healthy and you can be and continue to be the caregiver for your loved one. So just to conclude here, we went over the signs of caregiver burnout, from having roller coaster emotions to being emotionally and physically exhausted. Tools and tips for you, including learning your loved one's prognosis, lining up backup care, getting organized, creating a care binder, and considering a support group. I didn't get an opportunity, a chance to talk about the benefits and entitlements, but if you do have questions related to benefits and entitlements, feel free to reach out to me or to even to Burner Law Group. I'm sure that they could share information about things like the Veterans Aid and Attendance Program. I was going to touch on long-term care insurance and a couple different things like that. There are both local and online resources for family caregivers to help manage your loved one's care, your responsibilities, and to make things related to caregiving easier to manage. And taking care of yourself, again, as a family caregiver is number one, so that you can be there for your loved one. Okay, everyone, so that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to take any questions that you may have. So I'm going to start with Annika's question. Can you say something about hoarding? My loved one lives in a private house in Westchester and she is a hoarder. It complicates everything. Do you have info about Westchester resources? Actually, yes, Annika, I can help you with a company that does provide cleanouts for hoarding. If your loved one is at that stage where they will allow someone to come in to clean out or to help them organize the home. There's other resources for just organizing. So absolutely, if you email me, I'm going to actually put in my email here. I will give you the resources for that. Let me just type. I will put it into the chat. I actually lost my little control with that. Okay. Just give me 1 second. Okay, here's my email for Annika. It's Jennifer@familyfirsthomecompanions.com. Okay, can you share the link to that TED Talk from Matisa? Yes, absolutely. I don't have that right now, but I'll give you my email address. If you could email me and I will send you the link. And then again, for everyone else, it's Jennifer@familyfirsthomecompanions.com. Okay. Okay, anyone else have any questions? Feel free to type them into the chat box. Okay, well, if no one else has any other questions, I want to thank you so much for joining me today and for taking the time. And feel free to reach out to me if ever you have any questions or need any resources. I'll be happy to help in any way I can.
Thanks so much, Jennifer, and thank you everyone for joining us today.
Okay, thank you. Take care.